We are live. How's it going, everybody? It's Wardy here, and we're back at it this time with a live edition of a Big Mets update segment here, late night, March 3rd, 2025. And as I told you guys, if this was going to be a snooze fest of a game between the Mets and the Marlins tonight, it wouldn't be a typical post-game show, but we're still going to break down all the key takeaways from tonight's 1-1 tie against the Miami Marlins. Of course, a televised night game with Kodai Senga on the bump, and the bats are nowhere to be seen. Juan Soto, Francisco Lindor, Pete Alonso, nothing, but that's okay because we're going to highlight what was dominance on the pitching front from guys like Kodai Senga and David Peterson, who made their long-awaited, highly anticipated spring debuts today. We'll get into what was so exciting about them, including Kodai Senga's new splinker pitch. Yes, you heard that correctly. It's a splinker, and it's a fun one that we're going to break down here shortly. From there, we're going to get into more on the bullpen front. Max Kranick was dominant yet again for the Mets, and we'll get into his chances of cracking this Mets bullpen to begin the regular season. And speaking of bullpen, no man that we want to see more this spring than AJ Minter, who the Mets acquired over this past free agency, a former Atlanta Brave that's been tremendous in high leverage as a true setup man. Where does AJ Minter currently stand in his appearance to, in fact, get in a game this spring training? And is he ready to go for the regular season, or is he a little behind? We're going to get into it all and then some in our latest update segment, everybody. And in case you guys did not check out our video that dropped earlier today, please make sure you watch it whenever you get a chance as we deep dive the latest Mets top 30 prospect rankings per MLB Pipeline, along with a lot of other key notes that we had in there. All the latest in Mets land, including notes on the outfielder front with Starling Marte, Brandon Nimmo, Drew Gilbert, all of their health statuses currently, along with plenty more in there. So thank you guys so much in advance for doing exactly that. And Jose Quintana not landing with the Mets, but in fact landing with the Brewers. Broke that all down for each and every one of you. But all right, guys, we're going to do a quick roll call here in the live show, and then we're going to go on with our segment just as we do. This is a pre-recorded fashion. Then I'm going to try to get to some of your comments throughout the live show and then towards the end as well. And thank you guys so much for spending some of your night, day, evening with your guy Wardy here. Be on the lookout as Wardy will be attending spring training beginning this Saturday, March 8th, and I'll be there till earliest the 11th and absolute latest the 13th. So be on the lookout for your guy Wardy. We're gonna have a lot of fun attending games over the weekend in PSL, and I cannot wait to see so many of you guys there, the same way that I can't wait to just get into this one. So let's do exactly that. We get to the big takeaways. As we know, the Mets did in fact have a tied 1-1 ball game today, and there was nothing on the offensive output whatsoever. But what we did find in both the first and the second inning was Kodai Senga going out there and doing exactly what you could hope for, which leads us into our first player spotlight today, Mr. Kodai Senga. In his first spring debut here of 2025, he gives the Mets two sharp innings of work at 31 pitches that we saw there. Plenty of strikes involved, 2 hits allowed, both 2-out hits, mind you, that we saw in the first and then the second inning. No walks, no earned runs, 2 strikeouts there. One of them was a swinging strike and the other was caught looking, got buckled up there. And in the first, Kodai began the game that we saw with a strikeout early on, and then he gave up that 2-out single that was on the hanging ghost fork right down the pipe. It did touch 96, however. When I say ghost fork, I meant to say fastball is what touched 96 today, at least from Kodai, with his already 5-6 pitch mix that he worked beautifully. And what we heard initially was that Kodai Senga was only going to be getting 1 inning of work today. No, after 3 up, 3 down, and a snap of a finger, Kodai is right back out there for the second inning, and he makes most of the opportunity. Kodai, same exact situation again, 2 up without a problem, 2 down, but then it's that third batter that he faces in the inning, which would be, of course, Albert Almora Jr. out of all people. You guys remember that Mets legend. Remember when we did a live show of the Mets signing him in our first year of covering the Mets here? Yeah, Albert Almora Jr. My goodness gracious. Talk about a guy who's fallen pretty much from the early goings of his career, and I know a lot of it had to do with the very unfortunate news that his line drive back with the Cubs unfortunately struck a little kid, and I know that ever since then, Almora was really never able to be an MLB mainstay. Always a strong glove from what we saw with the athleticism, but the bat-to-ball skills quickly diminished thereafter. Now he's just competing for a spot with the Miami Marlins here in 2025, but Almora would rip an infield single there and would get on because Senga is not in full speed bolting down the first baseline, and Alonso initially bobbles the ball after what was supposed to be a clean play, usually underhand tosser to Senga at first base, but between Alonso bobbling the ball and Senga not at full speed, because the last thing we need is Senga to get hurt again with that calf or anything, that allowed the runner and Almora to be safe, but he would get out of that without a problem in Kodai Senga. So Kodai, folks, in his spring debut today, has a four-seam fastball touching 96 and sitting 95. The sweeper there that we saw that was topping out right around 82 there, sitting 80. The slide piece looked very sharp as well, sitting right around low to mid 80s there. And the sink piece, this is what's fascinating, folks. You got the cutter, the curveball, and obviously the ghost fork all in the mix. You got a 6-7 pitch mix from Kodai Senga tonight. But what is not properly documented through Baseball Savant, among others, is the new splinker. Yes, you heard that correctly. It's an actual splinker of a pitch. This is a term that many of you guys probably know with a guy like Paul Skeens, and now we're getting it from Kodai Senga here, who Carlos Mendoza said it himself on the Mets' new sinker that Kodai Senga has and how dangerous it can really be. And here is actually Carlos Mendoza's words himself when speaking to the media about it.
Senga mentioned the sinker specifically today. What do you think that pitch does for him, or could do for him?
Yeah, I mean, look, especially against righties, it's a pitch that you can get ground balls if it's a pitch that is running into righties, and he gets hitters off his splitter, his slider, so he's got something going into righties. So if that's a pitch that he can really use when he needs to, I mean, it's a dangerous pitch, because, like I said, he can manipulate the baseball in a lot of different ways, whether it's down with the split, with the fastball, the slider, and then now adding that two-seam is another weapon for him.
Senga mentioned the sinker specifically today. What do you think that pitch does for him?
Alrighty, folks, so a key note here on the splinker, and this is shout out to my amazing pitching contributor, Isaac Rothman. Make sure you give him a follow on X if you guys haven't already. Looking forward to meeting Isaac for the first time in person this weekend at Port St. Lucie too, so be on the lookout for that, everybody. Let's see. Isaac goes on to say it looks like Senga is throwing a splinker. It's not a sinker. The velo difference from his four-seam fastball says so. From his arm slot, you'd expect 14 inches of horizontal break on sinkers, so at 18.4, this is well above average. Don't let the stuff grade fool you either. This can be a weapon against both sides of the plate. We heard Carlos Mendoza emphasize how it can be utilized, especially against righties. So we saw, for example, how Kodai Senga really maximized his cutter that he added to his arsenal in 2023. Expect the splinker to have similar usage in the sense that this is not a strikeout pitch, as this is more of a setup pitch for you. Whether this is going to help induce ground ball outs or help set up your ghost fork, your true strikeout pitches, whether that is your ghost fork or your four-seam that you're just trying to blow some guys by with in Kodai, this is a type of pitch that's going to help you get there. So to have pitches that play up against both righties and lefties is great to see. Kodai has been very diverse with his arsenal throughout his young career that we know, and now he had himself quite the showing for the Mets and his first spring outing today. Mets fans, let me know how you're feeling about Kodai Senga, because Kodai was feeling so good after his outing today that he even threw a bullpen, which is why you guys seen the highlights that I'm showing, him actually throwing a little bit of a bullpen and feeling comfortable about that. He went on in his post-game presser today to say how much he's comfortable, especially with his gyro slider and that splitty too. So he's feeling very good about his pitches right now that he's working with, and sinker is what I actually think I meant to say, not the splitty there. But regardless, however you want to label it, a splinker, a new sinker, a new pitch, a part of the arsenal, part of the weaponry that is Kodai Senga. Now, everybody, let's go from talking about Kodai's brilliance to the man that piggybacked right afterwards without the problem for the next 3 innings there, and that would be David Peterson. David Peterson was nothing short of stellar for the Mets today, giving them in 3 innings of work, 37 pitches, a lot of strikes, only 1 hit allowed, 0 walks, 0 earned runs, and 5 strikeouts by David Peterson. Let's not forget Peterson's brilliance with the Mets after coming back from his surgery he had last offseason, which is what delayed his 2024 year up until he made his debut around June. From that point on, David Peterson, while the expected numbers didn't favor him, he continued to be an absolute workhorse in this Mets rotation and was deemed by many as the most reliable throughout the good stretch of summer last year. Peterson today showcased that four-seam fastball, topping out at 94, sitting right around 93. The slider there sitting around 84. The sink piece right around 92. The curveball right around 81. And the changeup at 84 to 85. So David Peterson utilizing that 5-pitch mix beautifully for the Mets here against what was, of course, a lesser lineup for the Miami Marlins. But Peterson has really toyed between being a ground ball pitcher, a strikeout pitcher in recent years. It's going to be fascinating to see how he really blossoms, and hopefully giving the Mets a workload of a 30-plus start season, and hopefully, fingers crossed, giving us a respectable 3.5 ERA or lower, I think is well within reach of David Peterson after what we saw him do this past season. Mets fans, I would love to hear from you guys in the live chat in the comments down below. How do you guys feel about David Peterson and Kodai Senga's great emergence so far here this spring trading, and which between the two do you have the most optimism with for the Mets in 2025? Is it the guy that's been more reliable of recent in Peterson, or is it the guy with the highest upside in Kodai Senga when looking at ace potential? Between the two, I would love to hear it, and thank you guys so much for doing exactly that. But David Peterson, will need to see more of this from him this spring training, and I will be a happy camper certainly as a Mets fan. But folks, as we continue to break down the key takeaways in this one, let's just go on any by any here, because Peterson, as I said, had himself some really strong innings of work. He gave up that one hit that we saw, but he had a 1-2-3 third that consisted of 2 strikeouts. Then in the fourth, we saw him give up a single because Hill had a ball that got past Alonso. Alonso didn't look sharp at first base today, but it's spring training, so he gets the pass there. In the fifth, we saw Peterson with another 1-2-3, his second and 3 innings there with, again, 2 strikeouts. So David Peterson, a very strong final line for him today. And then we saw in that same inning there, Tyron Taylor got on base with a walk, and Donovan Walton, competing for, of course, a Mets utility role over Brett Beatty and Luis Angel Acuna, got the start at second base today for the Mets and did rip a 2-out single, but to no avail. No runs came of it. The Mets starting lineup today originally began as follows, just in case anyone did not watch today's game, not like you missed anything offensively at least. But Lindor was in leadoff, Soto batting second, Alonso third, Vientos fourth, Taylor fifth, Terren sixth, seventh was Donovan Walton, 8th was Chris Williams, and 9th was Jose Azcar, who did record another hit and went all the way first to third on a ball that got passed on Hill. Funny enough, the guy who was making offense happen for the Marlins today, had a really poor defensive play there in center or so, and that got past him, which had the speedy Azcar going first to third without a problem. The Mets would score Azcar in that inning that we saw in the 6th, the same inning that Miami got their first run of the day, and that was all thanks to Simone Juan, if I'm not mistaken, brought him in there. That we saw with the sac fly. Was it Simone Juan? Yes, it was. Brahman, and funny enough, Juan Soto was then replaced by Simone Juan, and then that tied the ball game 1-1, and that was that. There's really nothing else that was notable other than the 6th. Jose Butto came in and had himself a mess, which meant that he was not able to get out of it. He gave up an infield single originally, as Mark Vientos could not make the proper play to throw there to first base. Hill then with an infield single, and then Connie, Conine, how do we pronounce the Marlins rookie's name? He had himself an RBI single, which initially made it 1-0, and then Donovan Walton made a really good play for the force out, and then Shook came in, the reliever that's not on the Mets roster at all, but is on their minor league roster, came in and got the final out there, thankfully unscathed for Jose Butto in the 6th. In the 7th, we had Huascar Brosman allow a couple hits to get on, but to no avail. Brosman, the former Miami Marlin, now turned New York Met, is looking to be a focal point in their bullpen this year that we'll see hopefully a lot of in 2025. I think Brosman under a normal camp for the Mets this spring training with Desi Drewskull, Eric Yagers, Jeremy Hefner, everyone working in that pitching staff, they're going to get the best out of him. I firmly believe that. I think he's going to handle high leverage better than certainly what he didn't do for the Mets after being acquired from the Marlins at the trade deadline last year. Which leads us, everybody, to the 8th inning. In the 8th inning, we saw pure dominance again from our guy, the New York native. And when I say New York native, I believe his family's originally from New York, but Kranick grew up in Scranton, PA, which is not at all far from me, who's grown up in Pennsylvania as well, originally from Long Island. Max Kranick, a great friend of the channel that we had on our live show, live from Amazing Day a couple weeks ago, who I look forward to seeing in person there at Port St. Lucie in a couple days. Max Kranick was a gem yet again and is a huge story right now for the Mets when looking at their bullpen configuration. Now, first and foremost, I know that there are fans out there that love the idea of Max Kranick being a starting option for the Mets. I'm sorry to upset you, but that is not going to happen right now because the Mets are not stretching Max Kranick out as a starter. He was a starter originally drafted by the Pittsburgh Pirates, and he had a couple of innings of work that we saw. Then we saw him go down with injury, unfortunately, which is what led him to being a waiver claim pickup by the Mets from the Pirates organization over a year ago. Kranick, who had a great early start to spring training last year, sadly went down with injury, and that's why he didn't crack the team right away out of camp. And then it was an uphill battle from that point on as the Mets utilized him in various ways in the minor leagues last year. But he will be a relief option for the Mets, a multi-relief option potentially. And Kranick's upside looks so good that he has all the makings of having a breakout for the Mets the way that a guy that Jose Butto had a breakout for the Mets last year. Kranick, who grew up a diehard Mets fan that we know and has a very sharp arsenal, had 1.1 scoreless innings today that we saw there, including no hits, no walks, no earned runs, 3 punchies for Kranick, who has now pitched 5.1 scoreless innings so far this spring training, which consists of the following: the four-seam fastball that touched 97 today, that sat 96, the slide piece there that was sitting right around 87, touching 89 rather, and the sweeper, which was topping out at right around 84 and sitting right around 82 that we saw. And I do want to go back to the sweeper just for a second here and shout out to my amazing pitching contributor again there at Isaac Rothman, who had a great breakdown that I want to show you guys here briefly. So let's get these highlights off for just a second, and let's minimize this. Let's do all that fun stuff, and now let's go back over here, and let's go down to Max Kranick. So Max Kranick's numbers here through TJ Stats, who does a great job on giving you more advanced metrics and breakdowns on how a pitcher performed. In the case of Max Kranick here, especially his release points, among other things, all Max Kranick's pitches per stuff plus today were above league average. That in the four-seam, the slider, and the sweeper. And the crazy thing about his sweeper shape is that it literally, as Isaac puts it, and he's right, it's like he's throwing a fastball, but as a lefty. That is how it's appearing there to those batters. So a very interesting shape with the sweeper there. It's fascinating to see the success that he's had. And again, he had a 66.7% strikeout percentage today, Max Kranick, and then 1.1 innings of work. My question for each and every one of you Mets fans is, one, do you expect Max Kranick to crack this bullpen out of camp? And two, who do you expect him to crack a roster spot over when looking at his role for the Mets here in 2025? Let's not forget, Matt, and I've told you guys this for months on end when we talk about Max Kranick. Max was on the Mets playoff roster in the NLDS this past year. No, he did not get any innings out there with the Mets, but he was on the roster for a reason as a fresh arm for the Mets to consider. The velo looks great. The slider bites and that sweeper is oh so interesting. So we're going to see a lot more Max Kranick, but I do want to clarify something. Last time we broke down Kranick on the channel, I emphasized how he had a new changeup working as well as 7 pitches. That was my mistake because everything was recorded wrongly by MLB that day and StatCast, where it combined Tyler Zuber's and Max Kranick's arsenals. So I just want to clarify that once more. No, Max doesn't have 7 different pitches. Yes, he has 3+, which is awesome, and he's working on more right now. But no, he doesn't have a 7-pitch arsenal the way that I may have alluded to that when I talked about him over the past week or so. But Max Kranick, a great breakdown from there, everybody. And getting into last but not least here, talking about another pitcher, let's get into Tyler Zuber. Tyler Zuber, what a story he is, not only for a guy that adopted a baby duck that's, part of him and his family's life, which is so cool, that goes in hand with the Long Island Ducks. And speaking of the Long Island Ducks, Tyler Zuber, that's where he really kickstarted his professional career again last year. After initially thinking, you know what, I might hang them up, maybe I'm going to retire. He gets an opportunity and then he ball with the Long Island Ducks. He's throwing gas, the slide piece looks good, and then he's on the Tampa Bay Rays roster before we know it. And bam, David Stearns trades for him right around the deadline as a minor league deal. Zuber doesn't get an opportunity with the Mets at the major league level, but he's hoping to impact them this year. And Zuber's a fascinating one. He gave the Mets a solid 0.2 innings today, including a strikeout. As we go back to our main slide here, as Isaac is going to give you a great breakdown of it, Zuber's sweeper was apparently the nastiest it's ever been tonight, according to Isaac. Nearly 2 feet of sweep and 7.2 inches of lift, reminiscent of his indoor shapes this winter. He also flashed an incredibly flat VAA, four-seamer, though the vertical, the VAA there is not stable, something to bear in mind when looking at Zuber. Oh my goodness gracious, the sweeper today, guys, had a stuff plus of 180, 80% better than the average pitcher in baseball with this sweeper. That's how good it was. At the four-seam fastball, 22% better than the average pitcher there with that same pitch. The cutter was a little below league average in the 80th percentile, and the changeup was well above league average there, over 20% above league average when throwing that pitch. So Tyler Zuber has a lot of makings to be an interesting piece here for this Mets team that we know plenty of. Shout out to my Dave Kaplitz, awesome friend, even better follower as well. Dave, thank you so much for the endless support here. I look forward to hopefully seeing you at a Mets game this year. We'll definitely make that happen like we have in previous years. You guys know Dave, a huge, beyond generous supporter here on the platform and a great friend of mine. Very happy to have him in the show like each and every one of you guys. But when we talk a little bit more on Zuber, let's also not forget what we're getting with the velocity with someone like him, because Zuber topped out today that we saw on the velo right around, 94, 95. So sat right around 94 there on the four seam. The sweeper there sitting right around 81 to 82. The changeup mid 80s, and the cutter right around 90. So Tyler Zuber, just one of many arms that the Mets have to choose from, an abundance of arms that they have there to choose from this spring training, and that is never a bad thing for David Stern. So when we look at the ever-changing bullpen throughout the course of the 162, let's bear in mind that the Mets will absolutely get looks from guys like Max Kranick, Tyler Zuber, even if they don't crack the team out of camp. But in the case of Kranick, I think he's become an increased reality of cracking this team, because he also fits the mold of not just being a one-and-done guy of an inning eater. No, he can eat multiple innings for you, and I think the Mets want as much length with relief options as possible, which leads to a great question with guys like Jose Urena as well, who will be impacting this Mets team. That'll be a swing man, a back-end starter, and a reliever for them, who was nails as a reliever last year with the Rangers, posting a sub-3 ERA in 64 and 2/3 innings. So Urena has some nasty late movement with his pitches, and I like him as a relief option. But will he be cracking this Mets team out of camp for the rotation as a swingman type? Does Max Kranick have a better opportunity? We're going to see as spring training continues on, everybody. But I definitely want to hear from you all in the comments down below. What are your thoughts on their current bullpen configuration, which leads us to our conversation now on AJ Minter. Anthony DiComo, that many of you guys know on the beat for the Mets, thermalb.com, dropped a piece a day ago on AJ Minter and where things currently stand. And good news, Mets fans, things are continuing to trend upward for the former Atlanta Brave turned New York Metropolitan, as AJ Minter pitched a 25-pitch bullpen back on Sunday, and it was successful. He was facing Mets live batters, including guys like Alonso Lindor, etc., and he will be having one more bullpen before making his spring debut, but he is still ahead of schedule, and everything is now in line for AJ Minter to hopefully be on this team's roster for opening day. As long as he gets that spring outing over the next week or so, which is what it's looking like right now, which very well could happen while I'm in attendance in Port St. Lucie for those number of days over the next week. We'll be on the lookout for it. AJ, who is without question a nails piece in this bullpen, one of the best high leverage arms, not just as a lefty option, but truly one of the better high leverage arms in all of the National League. That is going to be Edwin Diaz's setup man more often than not this season. And the beauty about having a guy like AJ Minter is that, yes, he's dominant as a lefty, so you can have him come in for lefty-specific matchups, but AJ's so good that you really wanted more of a setup role than anything else. Whereas a guy like Genesis Cabrera, for example, or Danny Young, to a lesser degree, because I like Genesis Cabrera more between the two, is that Genesis can truly be more so of that crafty lefty option, mainly facing lefty batters, whereas a guy like AJ can just come in to face the best of the best in the eighth more often than not when he knows he's supposed to be. And then obviously, especially when you have, say, key parts of the order for a lineup, when he's going to be facing, say, the Atlanta Braves and having to deal with key lefty batters like Matt Olson, or when you're going to get guys there, I'm not going to say Ozzie Albies, because isn't Ozzie switch? I could be blanking there on Ozzie, but regardless, I think Ozzie switch, right? You guys can let me know in the comments. I'm like 85% confident that Ozzie Albies is a switch hitter there. But when I think of the lefty bats as well there, that could be impacting things for the Braves, a guy like Olson, it would be amazing to see AJ Minter get a nice punch, whether that's fastball up and away or slide piece down and away. I'm looking forward to seeing that happening and things really being full circle. But Mets fans, I definitely want to know your excitement level on AJ Minter. Thankfully, there's been no setbacks to this point, only positives trending upward for him to make his spring debut sooner rather than later and then get out there. And Hessis is an interesting arm, absolutely, because he's not a heavy strikeout guy, yet he does have a good makeup of pitches, a 4-5 pitch mix, including a fastball that sits mid-90s, so it's not like he doesn't have velocity. But Cabrera really is going to hone into more on the ground ball outs this season, as well as hopefully maybe an increase that we see in the K per 9. That would be great to see, because he struggled in his K to walk ratio last year with the Toronto Blue Jays. His baseline numbers and ERA were strong, but his expected numbers were no bueno. I think the Mets can definitely get more out of him than what has been the case so far over the past couple years with other teams, even though he pitched in almost 70 games last year. He pitched in a lot of games for the Toronto Blue Jays last year. That shouldn't be forgotten. Could Kranick push out Budo? I only see Budo being pushed out as if he really is underwhelming. And I honestly wouldn't be shocked if that happened at some point throughout the year. Not that I don't like Jose Budo, because I do, But I think the Mets are not at all going to be stubborn to last year's breakouts in their bullpen, Henry Garrett, Jose Budo, and Daniel Nunez. I think this year will be a reality that at least 2 of those 3 are still impactful, but I could see at least one regressing or at least one not having as much of an impact because someone else blossoms. That feels like something that's fairly inevitably going to happen too. You know what I mean? So it'll be a fascinating one to follow as we continue to follow along with the Mets and their bullpen configuration. But Mets fans, I want to thank you all so much again for the kind words. Hi, Tyler. Remember to pick up package. Dave, what do you mean remember to pick up package? I already did that already, my man. Thank you so much, Dave. We just gave you a massive shout out the other day, Dave, when I was going over everything. Oh, did you send new things that I'm unaware of? Let me know in the chat. Otherwise, I'm confused because he sent this over my way as well as a lot of other Mets. I have the other Mets hats beside me right now, and thank you so much for them, among other things. But let me know what I'm missing unless there was just some confusion that went on there. And Zaida, thank you so much for chiming in. You have a fantastic night. We are going to be wrapping up the show here just in a minute or two, everybody. But if you guys have any comments or questions you'd like me to answer before we get out of here, I will gladly do that. Otherwise, I hope you all have a tremendous rest of your night, day, evening, whenever you're watching this. And be on the lookout because we will have Mets post-game coverage or another big updates video or both tomorrow, depending on how the game goes against the Cardinals. Because one, I think the game is televised tomorrow. It might be ESPN, however, so be on the lookout for it. And 2, the Mets are on the road against the Cardinals. And 3, if it's a clunker of a game with little things notable, we'll probably just do a pre-recorded video. The only reason why we're not pre-recording this one is because of the fact that, 1, I want to go live for you guys tonight because it's been a minute since we did our last live show. It's been a couple days. And secondly, I also did a video not long ago, and I didn't want them to kind of overlap. The algorithm doesn't like it sometimes when you post videos back to back versus doing a video in a live show. Kind of separates the two a little bit. But Dave, love you, my man. Thank you so much again for everything. Let's see here. What is the current starting 5? What would my current starting 5 be? I mean, given the configuration, and it's going to be Kodai Senga, not Shamaya. Damn it. Hate that Sean's injured. Kodai Senga, David Peterson, Clay Holmes. My 4, I would go with, I think Tyler McGill is going to show us why he will become that 4, and that's going to start tomorrow with his outing against the Cardinals. Mendy's really bullish on Tyler McGill this spring training. The Mets staff entirely are very excited about McGill. They feel like that they have maybe finally cracked the code with Tyler. We'll see if that's true or not, obviously, because it's another year where Tyler McGill seamlessly fits in the rotation when he was initially boxed out as our 6th starter, but now he'll probably be our 4. And then our 5th will be one of Canning or Blackburn, and the 6th will be whichever one isn't, unless a guy like Jose Urena really impresses enough, and maybe the Mets kind of like him better than Griffin Canning, or maybe they don't like how Blackburn's looking. Again, there's a lot of time from now up until the season starts around March 27th, so we'll see what happens there. Aswins, thank you so much for the kind words. All the way from India. That's insane. Thank you so much. I love that. Really, really cool. We got supporters from all over the place. You guys are absolutely amazing. So thank you guys kindly for that. It really does mean a lot. But that's going to wrap up our show, folks. That is all the latest in Metsland and our latest Big Mets update segment. Be on the lookout for more live shows and pre-recorded content going forward here on the platform all week long. And we will have a live show either Wednesday or Thursday giving away a Mets jersey of whatever player you guys want as a further thank you for 32,000 subscribers. That'll do it for the guy Wardy, though. Have a great one, folks. And as always, no matter what, let's go Mets, baby.